Hey guys, Matt aka Martiln here, and welcome to episode 2 of Mixing Music in Ableton Live, a series where I break down my process of mixing music in Ableton Live 9. If you haven't checked out the previous video in this series, make sure to check it out now, as I'll be continuing on from where I left off in that video. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Alrighty, so we're back in here in the Ableton Live session that I left off with last episode. I haven't changed or touched anything. So the first thing we're going to do is just listen to it and see if I can pick out anything that needs changing. So one thing I'm noticing is that I'm thinking that the kick is maybe a little bit too bassy and prominent. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to grab a spectrum here on the master channel. I'm going to take it off auto, I'm going to leave it on 0 and drag it down to -180 and change it from line to bins. This is just a personal kind of preference that I like to use with the spectrum. So if I play the track, staying on the master channel, yeah, see, that is a little bit too bassy. The bass I think should be probably more about down here-ish. So I'm just going to drag the kick down a little bit until it feels kind of right. Feels a little bit more better there. So one thing you kind of want to look for as well is that the kick and the bass are sitting at pretty much the same level and one's not taking over the other. So if I solo the kick and the bass and just kind of keep my eye on the frequency here of the spectrum, we'll just have a look at the peak kind of values of the bass and the kick. So you can see the bass kind of poking through around here. If I unsolo the kick, so it's just the bass playing, you can see this is kind of where the bass is peaking. And then if I solo the kick, you can see it's a lot higher. So what I might do actually is just turn up the bass a little bit, and then maybe this will... Yeah, so there we go. That's sounding a little bit better now if I play it. Maybe a little bit too much. Take the bass down a little bit. As you can see, it's a bit of a kind of back and forth process, really. Like I said, I haven't touched this session since the last video, since recording the last video, which has been probably about a week and a half. So it's always also good to kind of have a fresh opinion on it when you have time to kind of leave it and then come back to it in the same settings, see if you missed anything. So what I'm going to do now is start a little bit of EQing, subtractive EQing. So I'm going to go into the chords here. So what I often do is, this is something that a lot of people do, and it's something that's argued about, I find, a fair bit as well. But I do high pass most of my things just because in case there is anything down there that might just be building up and interfering with any of the bass or the kick as well. So I'm just gonna solo the chords here and have a look at the spectrum analyzer on the EQ. You can see there's quite a lot of noise building up down here in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is just do a ×4 curve, drag it up to about 100-ish or so. And if you can see, if I turn it on and off, there's barely any difference, but we're just getting rid of all that kind of mud down there. You can even drag it up a little bit more because the kind of fundamental frequency is just about there. So yeah, there's not much going on down here. So I'm just going to get rid of these other nodes as well And I'm going to just do this for each of the other instruments. Have a look at the ARP. Yeah. Just kind of drag it until you can start to hear it change. And then drag it back a little bit. This little frequency analyzer is also really nice in Ableton's EQ8 to be able to see that. And just cut rid of these nodes as well. And then we'll move to the guitar. Sorry. So I just kind of cut it down to just below where the final note is, because that's the lowest note. And again, just take off these nodes here. We won't do it with the bass because that's, well, that's the bass that should be down there. And we'll just do it with these two little ones as well. So just put this here. Now you can see with this one that it is actually changing the sound quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is play it in context with the rest of the tune to see if it changes anything at all. See, not really, because it's just building up a lot down here and just kind of interfering with the bass and everything as well. So I'm just going to try and drag it up until it's kind of sitting nicely with everything else. What I'm also going to do is just drag this node down here a little bit, because this is kind of the region where I want all my synths and stuff to pop through. So I just want to drag this down a little bit here to just give some room for the other elements. Yeah. And so we're just going to do it with the short noise sample as well. Yeah, so there's not much going on in there. So there we go. That's nice. So this bass is still a little bit too loud for me, so I'm just going to drag it back down. So I'm also going to apply this EQ to all of these drums, and I'll be back in a second. I'll just do the same kind of process and I'll show you the end result of that. Okay, so I've applied this same technique to everything except for the kick and the bass. I'll just show you quickly my EQ settings. On the clap here, again, the high pass, a little bit of a pull down in the mids here because it was a little bit just not nice to my ears. And I wanted it to pop through a little bit more, so I boosted the high end really, really slightly with a high shelf. Just really slightly. The hat loop, pretty similar kind of thing to the clap, actually. You'll notice I put the EQ post the sidechain compressor. That's because sometimes, depending on your attack time of the sidechain compressor, it can actually just give some little, some lower frequency information I found. Anyway, which is undesirable in something like hats. Although these hats, I would usually cut hats a lot higher in terms of a high pass, sorry. But this particular hat sample has a lot going on in the middle range, so you can kind of hear that. If I drag this up anymore, it sounds quite unnatural. And in context of the tune, it also works down here too. I'll play the tune in a minute. The shaker, just pretty high up, high pass, because that's all that's needed there. Again, post the sidechain for the same reason. It's percussion loop 1. There's a little bit going on down in this lower area, as you can probably hear, which is, so that's not very high in terms of its high pass. And then the percussion loop, a similar kind of thing. And it's, so you can see here, I've also cut and boosted this little part just here. And that is one of the kind of fundamental frequencies of one of these little metallic kind of sounding instruments in here. and I just wanted that to pop through a little bit more. So I've just boosted that. And lastly, not least, the crash. And I've done a very similar kind of thing and just high passed it. And so I'll play the loop. So that's pretty nice. It sounds pretty good. I'm thinking I'm just going to take a quick look at this spectrum analyzer again while we play it. So I'm feeling that this guitar could have a little bit more high frequencies in it. So let's just have a quick listen to the guitar. So I'm actually just going to put on this high shelf again, this number 4, and I'm just going to drag this up, hold Alt down and drag down to adjust the Q settings of it so that it's smoother. Just gives a bit more brightness. I think that sounds quite nice. I'm also going to grab these chords and I'm just going to boost them in the mid frequency here a little bit. So there you can hear what I'm boosting. Pretty broad kind of boost around here. And that should be feeling quite better. Trying to even out the frequencies a little bit more, just gonna drag this kind of lower mids down a little bit here. And the last thing we're gonna focus on is this ARP. So just kind of figuring out what part I want of the ARP to pop. So let's have a look and let's listen to it. I kind of want it to have a little bit more around this middle area around the 1K mark. So what I'm going to do is just boost that really slightly. Cool, that sounded nice. So next thing I'm going to do is apply EQ to the bass. Now we haven't applied a high pass to this because we want to keep all those low frequencies, but I do want to drag down some of the mid frequencies to make room for these other synth instruments. So what we're going to do is again listen to it and have a quick look at the frequency spectrum and just have a look at where we'd be kind of clashing with the other instruments. So here it's still audible, but it's bringing out these other instruments a little bit more just by cutting these frequencies here. And it's also a good idea to turn off any nodes you're not using just to save CPU, because it's minimal, but it does all add up, especially if you've got projects with 50, 100 tracks kind of thing. So next we're going to EQ this kick. It should be kind of okay. This is a kick that I made myself. So I've processed it to kind of how I like my kicks to sound, but we're just going to play the track and muck around with the frequencies a little bit to see if we can get it to fit maybe a little bit nicer. So to me, that is sounding pretty nice just by applying this EQ to all of this. I don't want this video to go on for too long, so what we're going to do now is just have a listen to it, have a look at the frequency spectrum, and then see if there's anything else that I want to apply before moving into some compression. So this video has been going on for about 20 minutes, just a bit under. I'm feeling like I don't want this video again to go on for too long, and I feel like I've done a little bit of EQing in here, which is nice, and brought things a little bit closer to where I want the final product to be. So I'm gonna leave it for today, and in the next episode we'll probably apply some some compression, and also import a reference track to then see if we can balance out the frequencies a little bit more to more of a standardized frequency balance. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. I know that maybe I didn't get to go very in depth with a lot of things in this video, but I hope you still got something out of it. Again, I want to stress that a lot of mixing is practice, and the best way to get better at it is by doing it. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to catch the next video in this series. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Martil, and I'll see you guys in the next video.